Okay, dear friends, now let's get our hands dirty with Git. To do that, we need to create a Git account. Remember that we mentioned that there are several Git implementations like GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket from Atlassian. So in this case, we're going to stick with GitHub. It's easy to use, it's free, and today for a developer having a GitHub account is almost a must. So to create a GitHub account, just navigate to github.com. This is the official site, and in the top right corner you will find a sign up button. Click that. It has a beautiful onboarding process. It will ask you for an email. We're going to use our official Yet Another Channel for Tech email. It will ask you to create a password. I recommend you to use a strong yet easy to remember password. I have one prepared here. It will ask you to input a username. Be careful with the username that you pick, because in the future, if you maintain your GitHub account, which is totally recommended, because with that you can show your history and how you have participated in different repos, you will have to provide this username. In this case, let's try if we can use judge. It says the judge is not available, so let's try judged git. Judge Git is available. It says, would you like to receive product updates? I don't like to receive product updates, and then it will ask for a security check. And we're done. We can create our account. Now it will send an email to the mailbox you entered, and we will get a verification code. It's 498102. And with this, we should be all set. And there we are. We have now our GitHub dashboard. Here you can see that we can create a repository. We're going to be doing that shortly. It shows the recent activity. Obviously, there's no recent activity for this account. And if you work with a team with several developers, you can create an organization to share repos and work collaboratively. And you can also jump into documentation, or recommend you to do that if you want to deep dive into GitHub. And also you can add some information to your profile. In the top right corner, you will see a drop-down menu. With this menu, you will find different options to manage your repositories and your account. Maybe the most important thing is the settings here. And with this, we're all set. We have our GitHub account. We can now start creating repos, and let's see how we create a repo from the command line. Okay, so here we are in our local computer. We are in a folder called judge git n. We're going to create a new folder here. For this, we're going to use at first the git bash that is provided with the git installation. Let's navigate to that folder there. Here we are inside the judge git n. Let's create a folder here with this command mkdir. This is not a git command, this is an OS command. Let's call that a folder tutorial -en. You can see that a new folder is created. Inside the folder we have nothing, and let's navigate to that folder with the command line. You can see the folder is empty now. This command line shows the folder as a simple folder. Let's see what happens when this folder becomes a repo. For that, we're going to use our first git command, that is git init. See that it says that an empty git repository has been initialized in this folder, and you can see a couple of things. In the background, in the folder, a new .git folder was created. It appears as a hidden folder. Usually in Windows, the folders that start with dot are hidden folders. If you navigate to that .git folder, you are going to see several files and several directories inside of it. This is the directories and files that the Git system uses to control the source code or the changes that we're going to make. I recommend you to not to touch anything here unless you are very well aware of what you're doing. Otherwise, you can end up causing damage to the repo. It's outside of the scope of this course to explain what these files and folders do. The other thing that we notice here is that this command line changed, and now you see a blue text saying that we are in master. With this, the system now recognizes this folder as a Git folder, and it's saying that we are in a branch called master, that is the main branch that the Git repo has. Remember when we spoke about branches, that branches are like places where you can have different versions of the source code. So now we have our repo initialized. Let's now switch to use the Visual Studio Code. This is a very well known, very widely used source text editor. I had a folder open here. I'm going to reopen that folder just to show you the entire thing. Let's navigate to Judge EN, and let's open this tutorial EN. This asks me if I trust the author of the folder. Yes, because I am the author. And now we can see, let's see several things here. In the Visual Studio, it will show you that in the File Explorer, you can see that we don't have any content. We don't have any files or folders inside this folder. The other thing that we're going to see is that in this, this is a very distinctive icon of Git, and if you come here, it will show you all the things related to the source control, in this case changes, and it says that we have no changes here. And other thing that I want to show you is I am using this Git graph extension. What this does is shows you graphically, you can see this in this animation, the different branches that you have or that you have created in these repos and the different commits. If we come here to the source control and then you click, you see that we have an icon up here that says Git graph. If we click here, it's going to say that we don't have any commits in this repository, and that's totally well because this is a newly created repo. So we're going to add a couple of commits next. For that, we're going to add a new terminal here. See that this git bash is built in with the Visual Studio Code. If you haven't worked with this, I must warn you that by default, when you install Visual Studio, it will show you the PowerShell, and if you want to change that behavior, then come to here to this plus sign and select the select default profile. It will show you a list, and you can select git bash if you want to use the git bash, and of course you will have to have the git bash installed in your system. And anytime you add a new terminal, it will add a new git bash terminal here. You can have several, as you can see here, and if you want to delete one, just click this delete button. So we are inside the tutorial-en folder, and it shows you that you are in the master branch. What we're going to do next is to create a file here. I'm going to use a command that is not git. This is the touch command, and this allows us to add a file. I'm going to add a readme.md file. Let's mention several things about this. First, observe that we are in a readme.md. MD stands for Markdown. Markdown is a widely used system to format text without the need to use advanced editors such as Microsoft Word or others. We just, with simple text commands, we can format text, like using, for example, the numeral character to add a title or something like that. It's out of scope to go through the Markdown language, but it's widely used in repos. Other thing that you should observe is that the name readme is in uppercase, and that should be that way in order for the Git to recognize this as the readme file. And what is the readme file in a repo? The readme file is a file that contains the most relevant information for this repo, so an end user or anyone who gets the repo can have an idea and a guidance as how to use the repo. What are the requirements to use the repo, what the repo does. Maybe you can add contact information there. This is very important, and every repo should have a readme file. We're going to see that the content of the readme file is like a presentation for the repo. You're going to see shortly that when you push the changes to the remote origin, the browser automatically will render the content of the readme file. So having said that, we create the readme.md file, and we can observe several things. In the file explorer, you see that we see a new file that is readme.md, of course, because we created that. It has an U and is like highlighted in green. If we open, we're going to see shortly what that means. If you open this, you see that the file is empty. And if we come to source control, we also see that changes now has the readme.md file. That is because that file changed. In fact, the file didn't exist before, and now it has been added. If we open here, we're going to see the changes. Obviously, there's nothing inside the file that changed, just the file was added. And see that that U stands for on track. That is because we recently added this file to the folder, to the Git repo, but we haven't quite included this readme.md file in the files that are being tracked or controlled by the Git. So we need to do that, because what we want really is to start controlling the changes that we made to all the files inside this folder. Then how we do that? Now, how we see those changes but using the command line? Let's use the command git status. And you see that with this git status command shows us that we are on the master branch, that we don't have any commits yet in this repo, and that we have an untracked file, and it that is the readme.md, of course, and it shows me like a help if you want to include this file in the files to be committed. You can use the git add and with the file name. So let's do that. Let's use the git add, and we can say the name of the file. I can use tab key for to complete the file name, or the other option is if all files that have been changed in this particular stage, you want to include those in the git, or include the changes that you did, you can use the --all or --a. For this case, let's use just the file name, and see that this is going to change. See that now we don't see any more changes, but now we have staged changes. Remember when we were seeing the introductory theory to Git, that we mentioned the staging area. Now we have those changes ready to be committed into the repo. Now let's rerun the git status command again, and it shows me, okay, we are in the master branch, no commits yet, but we have changes to be committed, instead of saying that we have untracked files. So this addition of the new readme.md files is a change that now needs to be committed in the repo. And let's do exactly that. Let's commit the changes that we did to the repo by adding the readme file. So we use a new git command, that is git commit. Let's use, for now, just to see what happens, the git commit command without any other arguments. See that a Vim editor appears, and this is to edit a commit message that should be included, or is recommended to include, in all commands. We're not going to use Git. We could also use other text editors like Notepad++, but for now let's see other way. I just exited the Vim editor, and the git commit command is aborted. So now let's see a more popular way to commit changes with a simple commit message is this. You type git commit -m, and in quotes you write the commit message that you want to include here, like first commit. Let's enter, and it says, okay, one file changed because that was newly created, but there are no insertions or deletions in any files. So with this, we have committed our first changes. Let's now come quickly here to the source control and then see the Git graph and see that it's not saying anymore that we don't have commits in this repo because we just added one, and it just shows me that we have this first commit here. Now we have our changes ready, but before doing that, this repo have been created locally and we do not have a remote origin. I was browsing in Google the way, or if there's a way to create the remote origin from the Git console. It seems that there's no way. I found a curl command to create the repo, the remote origin in GitHub using the GitHub API, but that involves like making a post. You can also use the postman, and you will have to pass the username, credentials, and several other things. And if you have this interface here to create that, it like doesn't make any sense. So let's now create a repo here. For that, I'm going to repeat that. Click this button, create repository in the GitHub dashboard. So let's name this repository tutorial-en. And I can add a description about the repo. I can make it public or private. I have the option to initialize a readme files. We're not going to do that because we just did using the git commands. It also gives me the chance to add the git ignore. We're not going to do that either because we're going to talk about git ignore later on in the course. So let's now create the repo like this. And at this point we have the repo created, but the repo is empty. You can see that we have nothing here. Something important is that up here we have our URL that is the actual URL for the remote origin. You can change to SSH too, but for now let's stick to HTTPS. Here it provides some commands to create and initialize the repo. You can see that are more or less what we did. The important part of this is that we can use this git remote. With this command git remote add origin, we're going to add a remote origin to this local repository here. With this we have said to this repo, okay, you are local, but your remote origin has this URL, so any request that you're going to make should be to this URL. And now we have to do a couple of things more, and with this we're going to see some other additional git commands. That is git config -- global, because we're going to input some user data, and we can say user.email. With this we're going to set the email of the user we want to use to access the Git system. In this case, obviously we're going to use the same email that we used to create the account, and we can repeat this command with the name. This is the name of the user that we're going to be using, or the display name that of the user that we will use. In this case, let's just write judge, and with this we have set the mail and the name of the user.
All right, here's the deal. Every time you watch my show, I will send you $40.
Checks will not be honored.
So now we are ready to push changes to the remote origin. How we do that? Let's see. This command git push origin is the command that we should use to push changes, but in this case something is going to happen, and I want to show you what happens, because the idea is that you start seeing the possible scenarios. In this case, this is telling me that the current master branch has no upstream branch. That is because if you come to the remote origin, the repo that we recently created in GitHub does not have any branches, because this is an empty repo. So we have to indicate to this repo that we need to set the upstream origin of our local branch in the remote origin, and it recommends me the command to do that is git push. We can copy this, but let's just type it again, git push dot dash dash set. I can use tab here to complete set upstream origin, and I'm going to say the upstream is master. With this we are saying that the local master branch has an upstream origin that is a master branch, should be a master branch in the origin. Now, because this is the first time we're using this GitHub system, it will ask me to provide some authentication. In this case, we can use a personal access token or sign in with the browser. Let's sign in with the browser. It will ask me to authenticate the credential manager here. So the authentication succeeded because I have my GitHub account open here and I am logged in. And with this, see that meanwhile we were in the browser, the process of pushing changes happened. We're going to repeat that shortly. And if we come to the remote origin, let's close this. If we reload this page, we can see that we have the readme with by the way, I misspelled the commit message. This proves it was me, so the first commit has been pushed to the remote origin, and you can see also that the user that committed the changes was Judge Git, that is the user that we just created. I want to repeat, I have another instance open here, I'm going to close this. I want to repeat this process, making some changes to the repo just to show you several things. Actually, we're going to make two changes. Let's come here to the readme file, and I'm going to say here this is a repo, and I want italics. I want to say my first GitHub repo. I'm going to save this file. If this is marked down, as I said, this is outside of the scope of the course, but if you want to see in Visual Studio a readme file rendered, you can click over, right click over it and open preview, and it will show you what the markdown does. We're going to see that when we push these changes to the remote origin, we will have to see something like this in the browser. So now let's do that. You can see that if you come to the File Explorer, you can see that the readme hasn't changed here because it already exists. We recently added the file, but if you come to the source control, you can see that we have changes. If we click here, you're going to see that it shows you what changed. In this case, we have this red line is telling us that we had a empty line before, and we added 3 lines. Obviously, the other lines are completed here with this area that has this pattern. Now let's push the changes to the remote origin. We have to do git add -- all to add all the files that have changes to the staging area, and then we have to commit the changes, git commit with -m, and the message is going to be added content to readme.md. And we have committed our changes. Now we can push the changes to the remote origin. Observe that now we don't need to specify the upstream because the upstream in the remote origin has already been set for this master branch, and the changes were pushed to the remote origin. Let's see if this changed. There we are. You can observe that if you navigate to the readme.md file, you will see the renderization of the markdown, but also, as I mentioned, the GitHub recognizes this readme.md file as the presentation of the repo and automatically renders the content of it in the canvas, in the browser's canvas. So I want to show you another thing regarding how to use the Visual Studio Code. I mean, how we can use the Visual Studio Code to make the same thing that we did by commands. Let's come to the readme. I want to change this. I don't want to show everything in italics. I rather want to show this GitHub in bold. I changed this just to show the GitHub in bold. Let's see if there we are. It seems that it's not showing here the bold. This might be a matter of rendering. I mean, the Visual Studio not rendering properly the markdown. So just to be sure, let's see if it renders the italic. So there we are. That's what we wanted to see. We should see that now in the remote origin, in the readme rendered in the browser. So instead of using commands, let's see if you come here in the source control, you can see that, as we mentioned, here appears the files that changed. If you hover over one of the files that changed, you can see that it allows you to open a file. It allows you to undo or discard the changes that you did. Obviously, it will warn you to avoid mistakenly discarding changes. And with this plus button, we can stage the changes. We're going to stage changes here. See that this is like if we were executed the git add command. And now we have the changes ready to commit. See that it shows here message to commit. We can here say like change readme.md, and with this we can click this check button to commit the changes with this message. Now we have committed the changes. And the other thing, if you push this dots button here, you can see that you can push the changes to the remote origin. Here it's pushing the changes. Now let's see if the changes, this was completely italics, now it should change to only show GitHub in italics. There we are. And what we did, without using the command line, the git bash, we managed to commit and push changes. And someone may ask, why, if we can do all that stuff easily using the Visual Studio graphics interface without the need to remember commands? That's about the position, but the purpose of this course is help you to get the grip of Git and really understand what happened behind the scenes, and not just to make your life easy. You can then, once you know the basics of Git, use the tool that you prefer. You can use other tools like Source3 or Tortoise, that is an old one, but in this course we want you to understand the basics commands of Git. So let's go very quick over the commands that we have learned today. We saw the git init to initialize the repo, git status to show the status of the changes, git add to add on track or changed files to the staging area, git commit -m with a commit message to commit changes, git remote add origin to set the remote origin of our local repo, git config -- global. We use this command with user.email and user.name to save the user that we use to commit push changes, and git push with the option to set upstream origin to a branch name to push changes to remote origin. With this, we have covered the first part of this ABC of Git series. We're not quite done yet. We are doing something here that we shouldn't be doing, that is pushing directly into a branch, in this case our master branch. That is not the way we should do that. In the next episode we're going to see how to create a branch off of master. Then we will be able to make changes and commit changes to that branch, push the changes to the remote origin, and create a pull request. That is the cycle that you will usually see. And that is what gives Git the power, because creating a pull request allows peers to review your work, start discussion, make comments, suggest changes or request changes, and that gives the collaborative side to Git. That combined with the remote or having the changes remotely hosted is what gives Git the power. We will see those, as I mentioned, in the next chapter. For now, we are done. I hope you have enjoyed and liked this video. If you have any concerns, any questions, any suggestions, as always, leave those in the comment. We are very attentive to what our people says. If you like the video, please share. I am Diego, this is yet another channel for tech, and see you in the next chapter.